Gentlemen, in my ongoing series on hats, we're now going to cover what is the most popular and prevalent dress hat in the Western world, the fedora. Today on Big Pretty Man. Hi, and welcome back to Big Pretty Man, a channel for the extra large man who wants to live his life large and in charge. I'm your host, Timothy Big Pretty Crowe. I'm a wardrobe and lifestyle consultant for the extra large man. Okay, gentlemen, in this ongoing series on hats, we're going to now cover a hat that really needs no introduction, the fedora. The fedora is probably the most popular and prevalent dress hat in Western culture, and it has been for nearly 100 years. I think one of the staying power of the fedora hat really can be drawn down to a couple of things. One, it is extremely versatile to wear. You can wear it with either dress clothes, or you can wear it with a business casual, or you can wear it completely casual. This hat will go with just about any type of outfit you want to wear. The other thing is it's an extremely comfortable hat, because it is a soft hat. And I think number three is because, well, it just looks so damn cool. You don't get much cooler than the fedora. So, so let's first go over exactly what a fedora is. Well, a fedora is a soft hat. It's not a stiff hat like the Hamburg or the bowler hat. So, and it's also what's known as a snap brim hat, because you can snap the brim down. It is a wide brim hat, and the size of the brim can differ. It can be up to 2.5 inches. So you can also get it much shorter. So you can have it small to medium to a larger brim. I actually prefer the larger brim because I'm a big guy, and we're going to go over that too. It has a center band. This particular one actually has a leather band. It's usually a cloth band. On the crown of the hat, it has the crease in the top, as you can see here, and on either side, it has the two indentations. It has the two pinches here on each side. That's what makes it. Usually, a lot of times they are a tier shape to the hat, so kind of shaping of a tier. But there are a lot of variations when it comes to the fedora. But these basics I'm talking about, with the crown, the pinch, the crease, having a brim, it being a soft hat, is what really defines it. Now, there are become a lot of different variants of the fedora. You have the what's called the Boston Jack out of Ireland. You have the Outback hats, and really a lot of those are really variants on the fedora. They're just kind of a form of fedora. And the fedora can be made out of a lot of different materials also. It can be, traditionally it's more usually made out of beaver or felt, it can be a rabbit, or it can even be made out of straw. There are straw fedoras. So so it's a very versatile hat and very shapeable hat. That's another reason that it's very popular, is because you can change it in a lot. You can turn up the brow, you can turn it up, you can pull it the snap down in the front, snap it up in the back. There's a lot of different combinations that you can do with a fedora. It makes it very versatile. Now, for the history of the fedora, it's a little hard to tell, because wide brim hats have really been used throughout world culture and throughout history. Anytime anyone needed to keep the sun or the rain off of their face. So farmers throughout history, even going back to ancient Greece, even Mesopotamia, we see some depictions of what may be wider brim hats, and definitely we see them in ancient Greece. And there are plenty of depictions of wide brim hats in medieval Europe, especially being used by the farmers, and then on up into into the Renaissance, and we start to see these different types of wide brim hats, very similar to fedoras. So it's been it's always been kind of a start. Or at least it started as very much a farmer or working man's hat. Someone that was outdoors. Somebody needed to keep the rain and the sun off their face. But what we know as a fedora, despite all of these different incarnations over time, actually come about in 1882 when there was a play that was written called Fedora. It was originally written for Sarah Bernhardt, famous actress, and in that play she often did cross-dressing parts. She was actually wearing a soft wide-brimmed hat, and the term for these soft wide-brimmed hats started to be taken on the name of the play. It's like that hat from the Fedora play, so it's the Fedora hat. So hence the Fedora hat was born. So we start really seeing them being worn around the 1890s more prevalently. Excuse me. And but they were still pretty much seen as a working class hat, still for people. Very much kind of like a cowboy hat today. Once again, keep the rain and elements off of your face. What changed that? Well, actually, the popularity of the fedora being worn as along with business attire and being seen as a more classy hat was actually brought about by English royalty. Now, you may remember in my last video when I was talking about the Homburg, the Homburg became popular because King Edward VII, when he was still Prince of Wales, was pictured wearing a Homburg, and of course, whatever the king wears becomes popular. So so the Homburg became second in fashion, only to the top hat. Well, and at that time, the more fancier hats, or the hats that were starting to become very much more prevalent at the turn of the century, were the Homburg, and of course the bowler hat. They started to get more of a respectable reputation, being worn by bankers. You'll see that in my first video on hats. But similar to the Homburg, the fedora come along and kind of knocked it off of its throne, and through the same way, as I said, through royalty. Prince Edward, Prince of Wales, the son of George V, eldest son of George V, who would later become Duke of Windsor after he abdicated the throne. He was back in the early 20th century, especially like the 1920s, 1920s up until the 1940s. He was a superstar. He was the biggest fashion icon and best, most popular bachelor in the world. And he was a real innovator of men's Western wear. In fact, a lot of what we wear today comes from his influences and the changes that he made. And one of them had to do with hats. Now, he like everyone else, had wore the more formal hats. We have photos of him. He wore the top hat. He wore the Homburg. He wore the bowler hat. However, he went one step more, and he was pictured wearing a fedora in more dress attire. And when this photo went, because he liked softer hats. He liked his suits and everything to be more comfortable and loose, not so stiff. So and the fedora hat kind of went with that. So once he did that, the fedora hat, just like the Homburg, became the hat of gentlemen to wear. And they started spreading like wildfire. He was first pictured in 1929. By the 1940s, even though the Homburg was still around, the bowler was pretty much out of style, especially in America, and the fedora had pretty much taken over. Everybody was wearing fedoras, and the Homburg was becoming a much more rare hat. It still is. But now, as I was saying, the fedora is the one dress hat that has never really went out of style. It's never really fell off, or it's still the most prevalent and popular dress hat. When most people go to get a dress hat outside of a baseball cap, what do they get? They get the fedora. Sometimes a trilby, but usually the fedora. So And it's, this hat is become so iconic in Western culture over the last 100 years, in our media, in our arts, that I think we overlook it as an accessory. It's just such a given that we don't think about it. But now I want you to think about it. Think about the classic actors of Hollywood, like, Cary Grant and Gregory Peck and Jimmy Stewart, and also the famous singers of the day who really made this hat cool. And that, like Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin and Sammy Davis Jr., the Rat Pack, what all they wear? They wore the fedora. It's just because, that's, and also if you want to think about singers even more contemporary, think about Michael Jackson and the moonwalk. Well, when he's doing that moonwalk, what's he wearing? That's right, he's got that turned down fedora. It was part of the act, as much as the glove was the fedora. And it's also become a hat that, in fiction, it was made famous by Mickey Spillane the pulp writer, in his character Mike Hammer. So the fedora became the hat of the private dick. But on the other side, also when we think about fictional characters when it comes to the fedora, one, of course, springs directly to mind. The man that made the Stetson fedora famous, Mr. Indiana Jones. The fedora hat and the brown fedora hat in Indiana Jones, that is, when you see the hat, you think of Indiana Jones now. But also, as far as a fictional character, another one you may not think about is as somebody much less pleasant. And, it would be, what would Freddy Krueger be without his dirty hat, which just so happens to be a fedora. Yeah. So, see, it's really, this is a real prevalent hat. And just as it was associated with, entertainers, it's also, we have the other, association of that, of course, is with gangsters. And when I say gangsters, I don't mean the rap versions. I mean, 1930s through 50s, Italian, Sicilian, Irish, or Jewish, the gangsters from the mafia. Think about it all. Al Capone, Lucky Luciano, Meyer Lansky, Frank Costello, Bugsy Siegel. Even though sometimes these men are shown wearing the Homburg, a lot of times they're wearing the most prevalent dress hat of the time, and that was, of course, the fedora. The fedora is so much a part of when we think of mafia. When you think of a hat of a mafioso, on a gunman, what's he wearing? What kind of hat is it? I promise you, it's not a bowler. It's the fedora. In fact, I don't actually wear fedoras very often, and it's for one reason, because with I guess it's just my looks, or maybe the way I dress. I'm not really sure, but every time I put one on, I look like I get told I look like an old gangster. I think I probably look like an old gangster now. I mean, when I put on a fedora, a Ivy League trained professor of comparative religious studies doesn't come across. What comes across is that I'm about to go to the mattresses and shoot Sonny on the causeway. So even though I love the fedoras and they are a very handy hat, I don't generally wear them very often. Maybe I have to change that. We'll see. But yeah. Now, as far as the extra large man goes with the fedora, I highly recommend the wide brim fedora. Fedora is a good choice for an extra large guy. Why? Because you want wider brims when you have a large face. And most of those big guys have large, fleshy faces, and big necks. So, with that, you don't want a small hat with a lower brim, with a stingy brim. You want a hat with a wide brim, so that better frames your face and actually puts it in a little bit of a perspective, and it actually kind of complements your face. Smaller brim hats aren't going to do that. Now, as far as materials and colors, of course, I would recommend if you can get one in the beaver, that is considered the best. If not, and those are expensive, you can always go with felt. I actually have a black Boston Jack, which is the Dublin form of it, that I think looks in felt, and I think that looks pretty good. A little shorter brim, but it works. So I would, but normally, rather than black, I would actually recommend a dark blue. I think that those look, you get brown and dark blue, but you can also go with other colors. Play with it. You can get like a more of a beige colored fedora. You can get a white fedora. Those actually can have a lot of snap to them. They're hard to keep clean, but they look great. So, there's a lot of variety out there. Now, as far as playing with the brim, I would recommend doing the turn up the brims on each side with the dip in the middle. I think, that gives this nice shape to the hat and presentation of your head, of your face. Of course, but that's up to you. That's one of the things about a fedora that is great, is they are so versatile. Like I said, you want to put this on with jeans and a button-up flannel shirt, it's going to work. You want to put this on with a three-piece suit, it's going to work. You want to put you can put this on with just about everything but your bathing suit, and it might even work. Fedora is so super versatile. It goes with everything, and that's why it's become so prevalent in Western culture. That, and as I said, it's just a damn cool hat. How can Indiana Jones be wrong? That's all I got to say about it. So yeah, I would definitely recommend this is a hat that you need in your wardrobe. Get them in multiple colors. Because when you go to fedora, if you can't look good in a fedora, you can't look cool. Okay, folks, that's about all I've got on the fedora. So if you have any questions or any suggestions, I would love to hear them. If you've got, tell me about what color fedoras that you wear, and what style. I'd love to hear about that. You can reach me, leave me a message down below. You can also reach me by Facebook, by Twitter, and by Instagram. All listed in the description. If you're like, as I always say, if you're liking my big mouth and what I'm saying, you're liking my content, then hit that King Henry head with my pretty face, and subscribe. I'd love to have you. I got plenty of more stuff coming up. I got a few more coming up on hats. I have a few videos coming up about dating and women for the extra large man. I'm even going to review some of my top 10 big men of all time. And I think, they don't get a lot of credit. I'm going to talk about them. So I've got all that to come. And until I see you again, step out in that Indiana Jones Stetson fedora. And until I see you next time, stay pretty.